Hello and welcome, Exiles, to the build guide for the Bear Shaman. I know it looks like a crocodile, don't worry about it, it's just an MTX. This character has been a blast to play from league start to now destroying bosses on the regular. All in all, the playstyle just boils down to a few things. Swipe, swipe, slam, click Calamity, have it going down, raining meteors all around you for 40 seconds straight as you just barrel through monsters, blowing up packs with your Maul, your Furious Slam, and a little bit of a new favorite of mine, Ancestral Cry, giving you a buff that makes you have duplicate bears spawn in and swipe when you do Maul, as well as empowering every single one of your Furious Slams with Ancestrally Cry boosted fire slams, which just mega rips into bosses, hits 2, 3, 4 million ticks on some of these hits, especially when we high roll a crit. It feels really punchy. Now let's go ahead and try to break down every piece of this character bit by bit. I'm gonna have timestamps below for all the different details, and just skip to the part you need or the information you're curious about if you're re-looking at this guide as you go throughout your progression on the character. Now, to start things off with the basics on the character, we are the Shaman, and why are we doing that? It's for Furious Wellspring. The whole reason I wanted to play this character or play this Ascendancy was because of this node right here combined with Walking Calamity. Walking Calamity says once you're at max rage, every rage you generate is going to get glory for this skill, and once you get to 50, you get to click this skill and it will remain active whenever you're in bear form. Furious Wellspring makes this a breeze. You don't have to think about it. It will just generate up and you'll see it fill up and you'll get to activate it, and then you just have all these meteors giving you additional damage throughout the map as well as additional clear. And quite frankly, it's a lot of fun, especially when you get to that level 52 and being able to equip it. Before you get to level 52, you have to start out as Maul plus Furious Slam combo. It's a bit of a slower start, but I think it was pretty cruisy for me on league start to go through the campaign with no gear. If you're doing this as a second or third character, get yourself some leveling gear and you're going to be just one-shotting bosses. Now, aside from Furious Wellspring giving us rage gen, you do need to scale the mana regeneration rate because that scales how much your rage regenerates. Your rage is based on 6% of your max rage. So the key components are getting maximum rage. That'll increase the base rage you're going to have. So things like Primal Rage and things like Battle Trance, the max rage implicit on your weapon. This all makes your max rage higher. And that means 6% of 90 is like, let's say 5 rage or 5.5, something like that. Whereas 6% of 30 would only be like 1.8 rage per second. So scale up your max rage, gives you more damage, and it means your rage regen per second is higher. Then on top of that, wherever you can add in mana regen, that helps scale it as well. So for example, Sceptre is a great place to get mana regen, 60% here. You can get up to 60% roll on your ring. There's 120 there. Defiance of Destiny has a little bit, 30% there. The Vial in Act 3 has like 30%. You can get a little bit of mana regen from things like Clarity 1 if you can get the Aura Spirit for it. This gives another 30 mana regen. All of a sudden, we're regenning like 20 rage a second, not just like 6 or 5, whatever it is. And that means that rage is going to pop all the way to full and going to fill up the Calamity, and we get to activate it with a lot of like feels good situation. So that's reason number one for clicking the Shaman. It feels a little bit bad to have to click Druidic Champion. We don't have any spell synergy. This is a bit of a dead node for us, but Furious Wellspring more than pays for it in terms of quality of life. And quite frankly, you get a bit of extra max rage through the small nodes and the big node here, and that gives you a decent amount of damage bump as well. To follow this up, we have one of my new favorite defensive ascendancies, Reactive Growth. Basically gives you permanent DR against the specific damage type you've taken recently up to 3 times, which gives about 30% less damage on top of the 10 less damage it has at baseline, which means if you're ever fighting a specific enemy that has a lot of damage, let's say Arbiter has fire damage or Geonor has cold, Reactive Growth will say, okay, we're adapting to this situation. We're going to give you damage reduction that you need for this specific fight. Very strong defensive node. Highly recommend it. If you are starting this character out, I would recommend doing Reactive Growth first, and once you get your second lab, you can respec to get Furious Wellspring right around that level 52 point to swap into doing Walking Calamity. Just make sure you get some max rage along with some mana regen to support it, and it should feel very smooth. Now, the last and quite frankly one of the best labs of this character, and my secret favorite lab of Shaman itself, is actually Wisdom of the Magi. Wisdom of the Magi is just chock full of feels good benefits. Every single rune we have in this character gives an extra benefit. For example, I decided to try to fix my res a bit with the bonded mod 10 all res that this gives. Normally, if you're going to get a rune to give you res, the Soul Core gives 5 all res, this gives 10. So 5 all res benefit there. Then one of the other benefits is a lot of the bonded mods for Sceptre mods are actually quite strong. For example, we're getting 30 skill speed between these 3 mods. Very, very feels good for how fast the character swipes, slams the Furious Slam down, activates Walking Calamity. Skill speed affects everything, and the more you can get of it, it just makes the character feel good. You'll notice throughout this character, I prioritize a lot of skill speed on the tree in quite a few different clusters because it just feels really good when things are fluid and fast. Next up, the benefits that are some of the strongest ones are the weapon runes. The gain chaos rune comes with 8% gain fizz. The attack damage against unique and rare enemies comes with +1 attack. And Sockwall Sky randomly will give us frenzy or power charges. You'll notice on our late game setup, we're using charge regulator. Occasionally we'll have a frenzy charge, that's like 25 skill speed, or a power charge, 25% more crit. It's just a nice little extra tacked on benefit that feels really good. Of course, the benefits don't stop there. We also get reduced slowing potency of debuffs between our attack speed rune we put in our gloves, the Soul Core for reduced slowing potency, this cluster right here, and we get a little bit of reduced slow potency from our Heart of Well. We have like 80-ish% reduced slow potency. You basically don't feel slows. Things like temp change, chill, stuff that would normally feel terrible for your character, just don't. It gets you past all those annoying sort of like not fun map mods or interactions, and I can highly recommend it. It feels great. And then another really powerful benefit is the fact that if you're on a budget, some more expensive soul cores, like let's say Jaquani's, which is 3% life, is actually very similar value to the bonded life rune, which gives 50 flat. The net benefit of Jaquani's from 5 of these gives me about, I think it was like 10 to 20 flat life compared to if I just use the regular life rune. So save yourself a bit of money when you're early on in the budget and just use some life runes, which give you a decent amount of extra flat life. Or if you need to fix res, all of the basic runes come with 10 mana and 10 life, and it just helps even that stuff out and feels really dang good. So that's the Shaman Ascendancy. That's why we picked it. Rage gen, bonded mods, and really nice tank. A very well-rounded package indeed. Next up, let's talk passive tree. You'll notice this passive tree has a lot of green and red passives. The reason for this is weapon swaps. We're trying to snapshot some value. Now, I want to emphasize that you don't necessarily have to do this if you don't want to. If you just want to have one weapon set and not worry about it, just use the red passive tree and have that be your main passives. However, the green passives, if you want to do these weapon set passives, give you a lot of skill effect duration between this cluster, this cluster, this cluster. It makes all of your duration skills last a lot longer. For example, my Walking Calamity would normally last like 21, 20-ish seconds, but instead it lasts like 37. We're almost doubling the duration of Walking Calamity by doing this. Now, there has been, I believe, some level of bugginess to Walking Calamity in that I'm going to try to turn this off because I don't want you guys to have to listen to this for 40 seconds while I describe this, but there's been some bugginess where Walking Calamity doesn't properly snapshot some of the shapeshift nodes, even if you're only swapping defensive nodes for duration. Maybe they'll patch this. I don't know if they have. They might have already done it, but this does lose you a bit of DPS on Walking Calamity, so I just want to emphasize that that is one of the downsides of doing this. So you could trade a bit of damage for having a whole lot of quality life. It also gives quality life to Savage Fury. As far as I understand, this does not work for mouse and keyboard. For controller, you can tell the game to properly use Savage Fury in the weapon set too, but I have not found a way to do this on mouse and keyboard. Mouse and keyboard, it lasts like 15 seconds and it doesn't use the duration properly. On non-mouse and keyboard, it lasts like 35 seconds. So hopefully they patch that to make it work with mouse and keyboard. Just one of the buggy things. And the last weapon swap thing we use it for is Ancestral Cry. What is this? It is a massive giga power spike. Whenever you activate this, your character has all of its mechanics ancestrally boosted, basically giving you Clear and damage. Your Furious Slam is always going to count as ancestrally boosted, which means you always get a really big damage multiplier from Fist of War 3. It means whenever you swipe with your maul, you probably noticed in the showcase of this introduction of this video that there were like 2 spectral images of bears popping up swiping as well. It basically gives you 2 additional strikes that occur. And on top of that, you look really cool because it puts some fiery calm armor on you. Now, to generate the Ancestral Cry, you need to be igniting enemies, and we do this through Walking Calamity combined with, I initially had Ignite 3, but when I got more budget, I added in Zoph's Pyre. And in Walking Calamity plus slams and stuff will generate you that glory. Now, when it comes to knowing when you can activate this, I would recommend putting it somewhere on your bar where you can see it, even though you're not going to actually manually click Ancestral Call. If you put it somewhere on your bar where you can see it, you'll see a gold border fill up around it. And once that gold border fills, you'll know if you Ferocious Roar, it will activate and give you that Ancestral Cry benefit. This is another thing we have on Weapon Set 2. And one of the other bugs you encounter with weapon swaps that they currently, I don't think they have support for, but maybe they fixed it or they're going to fix it soon, which is when you activate this with a mouse and keyboard, if you set it to Weapon Set 2, and the second you go to swipe back, it'll just instantly turn off. In order to avoid this, you can set it to both weapon sets and then set a skill like Pounce to Weapon Set 2. So that way, you know, whenever you pounce, you're currently in Weapon Set 2, activate Ancestral Call, you'll get the buff. And then when you start mauling, it won't get turned off. That's the workaround for mouse and keyboard. For controller, it just works properly if you set the weapon sets the same as I have in the end game setup. But just want to reference that. That's weapon set passives. As for the rest of the tree, it's all about getting rage for damage scaling, percent damage scaling where we can, armor scaling where we can. We have Anointed Vengeful Fury for armor per rage, percent attack damage where we can, and the good crit wheels that are close by. On top of all that, we have invested into a decent amount of armor applies to Ellie, along with armor throughout our tree to scale a decent amount of that mitigation layer to then combine with Defiance and Destiny for recovery. So that's the tree. You can look out most of the different variations of the progress I made throughout the character. There's snapshots from my Act 1 to Act 2, 3. Well, I missed Act 2, so that's my bad. Act 4, early maps, red maps, and you can kind of see the progression I made with the character as you follow along if you want to. Or you can look at my endgame tree and just kind of yoink the stuff that I found were the best nodes in the end and steal them as you go. So that covers the passive tree. Another big question I get is, why are you using a Sceptre and how are you using a Sceptre? In this patch, they added a keystone called Lord of the Wilds. This allows us to equip a Sceptre in our offhand, which is a very big benefit, but it comes with some very harsh downsides. It cuts your spirit in half, and it makes everything twice as expensive to reserve. So what ends up happening is a 30 spirit reservation, like for example, Charge Regulator, you'll notice instead of taking 30 spirit, it takes 60 spirit to reserve. So that's the downsides. The upside is you get bonded modifiers like skill speed. We're getting 30 skill speed between these 3 sockets, which feels very good. And on top of that, we're getting mana regen. And for example, we have strength on the Sceptre. You could have had mana on the Sceptre. All of that is extra stats you're getting from just wearing the Sceptre, and then you get the aura from the Sceptre itself. I chose to go with Malice, which consistently gives around 5 to 7 base crit. If you scale some more duration on your base setup, then this will scale as well, how much base crit it can build all the way up to 10 if you scale some more skill effect duration on your main setup if you don't do the weapon swap setup, the weapon swap stuff. And that base crit is quite valuable for damage scaling. An alternative option is using any of the purity auras, which makes your res easier. One thing I will note is purity reservation auras, they don't cost any spirit for the support you put in here, whereas Malice does. So one of the downsides of Malice, even though it's a better, I think, aura because it gives base crit, it doesn't let you reserve the clarity for free. So for example, the amount of spirit you need on this weapon to get 230 spirit reservations is 140. And then if you want to do something like Clarity 1, you need 180. The simple math equation is for every 1 spirit you want to reserve, you're going to need 4 4 times that amount before Lord of the Wilds is accounted for. So for example, 140 takes a base spirit from 100 to 240. That divided by 2 is 120 spirit, which means 230 reservations are going to give 60 reservations, 60 reservation, and reserve 120. Therefore, if I want to add in a 10 spirit reservation on top of that, I need to get another 40 spirit. So 180 plus 100, 280 divided by 2 takes you to 140. That 120 is for the 230 spirit reservations, and that leftover 20 is what's going to be reserved for Clarity 1. So the breakpoints are 140 spirit just to be able to reserve the 2 auras you want, and then you need 180 if you're going to add in something like Clarity 1 for a bit of extra mana regen. So that is the Sceptre. That's why we're doing it. I think it feels pretty dang worth it, especially once you get Oath of the Magi and you get these extra % skill speed runes. Next up in gearing, I want to talk about Morior's Invictus. You do not have to copy the exact same stats I have here. There are multiple good stats to use. What I would say is recommended is life plus all Res. Those I'd say are pretty mandatory. And then the third stat is a bit more flexible. You could go for global defense for more armor scaling. You could go for crit reduction for basically immunity to crit and crit maps. You could go for all attributes for stat check, or you could go for chaos res to finish up some of your chaos res scaling. When I was going for the super late game version of this build, which is adding in a headhunter because it's just the best belt slot and there's no competition for it, my belt was giving me extra attributes, and the belt I was removing had res on it. Previously, I had all attributes instead of chaos res, so losing the attributes getting attributes on the belt meant I needed to compensate for that to get res back on the chest. You get the idea. That third affix will give you some leniency based on how your rest of your gear shapes up. I would say basic thing you need is life plus all res. And before you want to go to Morior's Invictus, you can just use a very strong base armor chest piece with some decent rare mods and call it a day until you want to invest into iron reflexes. Aside from Morior's Invictus, really the biggest key item for defense in this build is Defiance. It is the end all be all for life build. Feels good. Defense, it gives you essentially shotgun immunity. It says whenever a damaging hit is going to come in, we're going to recover 30% of whatever life we are missing, which means if the enemy can't hit us for more than 30% of our total life, we could never die to that enemy. The only weakness we would have with this amulet is things like degens, which we account for via Leech plus instant Leech on Heart of Well, as well as max hit, which is one shots, which we are trying to adjust for by having armor scaling and Undying Hate. I will say right here, if you really want to go for a bit higher tank, a bit better max hit, you could go for a Calm's Heart, but that means you have to get rid of your reservation space in Herald of Ice and Savage Fury and the charge regulator. So make that call on your own if you want to do it. It is a decent option for tank overall, but it will lose you definitely some res. All your resistances are going to be more pressured elsewhere, and it will lose you your reservation spaces for things like shatters, like from Herald of Ice. Now for the most important gear piece of the build, the weapon. The Magi Talisman gives you max rage, and I have a guide on how to craft it specifically because this is one of the most important gear pieces. I'd say check out Trade to see if there's some decent deals, or watch my guide on how to craft it. All in all, just make sure you're always buying yourself some upgrades as you're going throughout the campaign, because this is entirely what will represent your damage as you get to each piece of content. If you have an underleveled, undergeared weapon, you're going to feel ZDPS. Make sure you're constantly upgrading this as you get through to a new act, new content, and you're trying to push into those higher tier maps. Real important is the runes for the +1 level and 50% attack damage, and for your second rune, the gain Fizz plus gain Chaos, and then the third rune, if you get a 3 socket, gain all elemental, feels pretty good for occasionally shocking enemies, along with just being a decent amount of extra damage. Now that covers most of the important gear pieces. The other gear pieces like the helmet, the boots, and the gloves, and the rings are all about filling up your res, your life, and then adding in a few key stats. For example, you want one source of life leech, one source of Fizz Leech's mana, and you definitely 100% want movement speed. Those are some mandatory stats. Everything else is kind of like, where can I get some life? Where can I get some extra caps on my resistances? And then after that, extra stats are things like getting armor applies to elemental damage, or things like attack speed once you have those resistances and life capped out. Because if you don't have good life scaling and you don't have your resistances capped, you're just going to be kind of squishy. Until you have that stuff figured out, there's going to be a lot of random deaths. It's just how this game works. If you don't have your res capped, if you don't have a decent amount of life, you're just going to die. So make sure you prioritize getting that stuff fleshed out. Lastly, I want to address min-maxy pieces like Headhunter, like Rite of Passage. These are very strong pieces to min-max your character after you get other upgrades done. I would definitely prioritize these lower than getting yourselves good rares, because they're just kind of like some extra boost to make your character just feel all that better throughout maps and whatnot, but it's not the priority to make the build work. I didn't get Headhunter until like this most recent day or two here, and yes, it does feel good, but it didn't make or break the character, and I wouldn't say you should force doing that before getting other upgrades like min-maxing your weapon or min-maxing some decent rares in terms of priority. Also, Lavianas, if in case you're wondering what this is, it's just to give us constant sustain on our mana pool. Helps basically give us a nice mellowed out sustain between the Fizz Leech's mana and this flask. It feels quite good. Now let's talk about playstyle on the character. I'm gonna try to break it down as simply as I can. Your basic attack, your maul, this is what is going to be generating you a skill called Bater's Vengeance. Before you get this, it's just some additional single target, but later on throughout your maps, it'll generate you a bunch of gain cold as extra because you will inflict freezes with it. But it's pretty much in combat when it comes to fighting bosses. It's swipe, swipe, slam, swipe, swipe, slam, swipe, swipe, slam. That's the sort of thing you're going to be doing. Now, obviously, I have a mana problem when I'm in my hideout, but when you're fighting a boss, you'll have Leech, and you can constantly rip those things together. That's kind of the pattern it falls down to. Outside of that, the other extra things are, when you're mapping, you'll click Walking Calamity every 30 seconds just to activate your meteors, and you'll do Pounce just to get some mobility throughout maps, as well as put down Conk Ground and put a mark on bosses. Before you get a consistent Leech bases on your gear, like Fizz and Mana Leech, Mark of Siphoning 2 gives attack damage leech for both life and mana, so it can kind of fill that role until you can get life and Fizz Leech on. Both of these mods can occur either on rings, gloves, or technically you can get it on your weapon suffix, although weapon suffix you'd rather have a damage mod. Now, aside from swipe, swipe, slam, there are a couple benefits you're going to do outside of that. When you're mapping, you'll see Savage Fury. If you have it in weapon set 2, you'll see a percentage build up. Once this hits 100%, you can click it. It will give you Onslaught for a duration. If you don't have skill effect duration for weapon set 2, it'll be like 15 seconds. If you do have weapon set 2 set up, it'll be like 35 seconds. It'll give you Onslaught and like 30% more damage. Feels great. Just click it whenever it generates, and it'll just give you some nice speed and damage throughout mapping. And then my favorite buff of all of them is Ancestral Cry, which all you need for this is you need to put somewhere on your bar Ancestral Cry, so that way you'll see this gold bar fill up right down here where you have it. And once it's full, you activate Ferocious Roar, which will proc the Ancestral Armor. You'll see the Calm Armor on you, and all of a sudden, whenever you maul, you'll get 2 spectral images of bears, basically extra additional strike targets hitting enemies. And whenever you go and do Furious Slam, you'll get the entire slam have this fire ancestral boost to it, which will proc Fist of War 3, which is why we're using this, is because it works perfectly with Ancestral Cry. Now, real quick, I want to talk support gems, specifically substitutes for a lot of these lineage gems, as I know a lot of them are expensive. I didn't have them to start with, and there are certain gems I used before I got them. For Maul, before I got Embitter, Freeze, plus Bater's Vengeance, I was using Close Combat 2, Heft, Rage 3. This allows for consistent fast rage gen when you're earlier on in progression. You don't have a lot of mana regenerate. You want a little bit more consistency on your rage gen. Rage 3 is great for that. Close combat's good damage scaling. And Heft, initially, you don't have as much uptime on Ancestral Cry, so you're mostly Fizz for your Maul skill. Then for Walking Calamity, instead of Zoph's Pyre, you'll do Ignite 3 for more generation on Ancestral Cry. Elemental Armament 2 instead of the Rigwald's Ferocity, and then Fire Penetration 2 instead of Rakiata's Flow. And then last but not least, Furious Slam before you get Gurikins. I would just recommend doing Rapid Attacks too before this, just for that faster, more fluid swipe, slam. Those are the support gems I did before I got the lineage gems. So that'll give you a breakdown on some of those. As for the rest of the skill support gems, Blazing Critical on Maul gives us a decent amount of gain damage with consistent uptime. That's why we have that there. Rapid Attacks for just smooth attacks. Duration for Malice makes Malice have longer duration on the crit weakness, so you get to a higher stack count. Ferocious Roar, we're doing a bit of Raging Cry. Initially, before you get Ancestral Cry, this just gives you a bit more rage generation. But then on top of that, you can use things like Efficiency to make it better on mana, and Heightened Charges, which doubles the amount of duration you get on Ancestral Cry from your charges. So occasionally, at like 20% of the Ancestral Cry procs, you'll get an extra minute of duration from those 3 endurance charges, which just feels really good. As for Pounce, Mark of Siphoning 2 for attack and mana leech. Then we do Eternal Mark, so that way when we consume the mark, it stays on there and we still have that attack and mana leech. Freezing Mark to help us get that gain cold damage, and then a bit of CDR and Holy Descent. So whenever we pounce onto the boss, we have that curse reduction along with the regen from Conk Ground, and we can more consistently proc this throughout the map with the CDR support. Walking Calamity, of course, is using Conk Effect and Duration, and then those 3 supports I mentioned, swapping these out. While Furious Slam used Close Combat 2, Aftershock 2, Magnified AoE, and Fist of War 3. Before you get consistent uptime on your Ancestral Cry, I'd recommend Fist of War 2 just for more consistent procs. But once you get some decent uptime on Ancestral Cry, consider Fist of War 3, as every single slam during that Ancestral Cry count as ancestrally boosted, which means your Fist of War 3 is going to double the effect of that ancestral boost, which is like 60% more damage. Yeah, it's a really nice support once you get some uptime on that. As for the Savage Fury, just duration on that. And then Herald of Ice, we have Long Shot, Armor Explode, Magnified AoE, Urg Smelting, and Armor Break. I don't feel like Herald of Ice really pops off for clear until your character is quite a bit stronger in terms of having like a really good weapon. So before this, I would recommend Herald of Ash, but you can try out different support, different auras and see what you think. Herald of Ice, I think, starts to feel really good as you get a better and better weapon, whereas Herald of Ice just feels good the entire time. You can make those choices for yourself. Once again, I'm going to mention, right now, the ability that we can use Savage Fury on weapon set 2 is, in my opinion, bugged, similar to Covalescence. It's a free reservation that we're not going to pay for, that I think GGG will fix, and when they do, I would recommend swapping either Charge Regulation, give up some of that defense, and put in Savage Fury, or swap Herald of Ice. Savage Fury is one of our best reservations, gives pretty consistent damage multiplier, so this is not the one I'd want to give up when that patch does go live. So if you are in a patch where you can't reserve Savage Fury on weapon set 2, just know I'd recommend giving up one of these other auras for it, as it's quite a big damage multiplier whenever you're going through maps, as well as just, hey, I'm about to fight a boss, let me proc this buff. Oh snap, I'm dealing twice the damage. Holy crap, that boss is already dead. So that's the idea. And then Fury of the Mountain. You might be wondering why I'm doing this. I'm not using this skill at all. It is only there to activate this node right here, Gem Enthusiast. If you have 5 green gems, you get movement speed. That's all it's for. We're not actually using this skill. This is just something where if you have extra sockets and you're trying to get, oh, I want 5% mana or 5% movement speed or 5% life, you can activate it with this gem. The important thing is you need these all to say 10 up here to get all the benefits from Gem Enthusiast. If I take off some of these green gems, all of a sudden I'm going to lose that movement speed. As you can see, 34 here versus 39. That's what it's there for. That's why I have it. Now let's talk about the guide for a bit. The written guide goes over a basic overview. It goes over how to scale your defenses, how to scale your offensives. I have some crafting videos on the most important items. I might do a couple more crafting videos on some other items, but we'll see how time shakes out. I have progression videos if you want to see how did this character look on day 1, day 2, day 3. That's what these videos are there for. Obviously, this video is showcasing the end game stuff, but you can look at earlier progression videos if you want to see what it looked like on worse gear. Quest rewards, Spirit Reservation stuff, in case you're confused by Lord of Wilds, weapon swap information, going over some of the bugginess or some of the downsides of various things or upsides of it. And then we go over alternate skill options. If you want, things like Rampage is a very good skill. I didn't personally like it, so I didn't like to play it, but it does give some good mobility. Stuff like Fury of the King, Very cool item. Gives you basically a leap slam combined with volcanic fissure. It's a pretty cool skill. Check it out if you want to. I didn't really want to have the slower attack speed, so that's why I didn't use it. And then some FAQ stuff, which I'll add to this if I keep getting some consistent questions for things that I didn't explain well enough in the guide. Now, next up, the build variants tab. Here is where you're going to go to see progression in terms of, okay, what did he have in Act 1, Act 3, Act 4, early maps, red maps. This will show you what I did when I made various upgrades. And then end game is just the picture of this is what you want to do and you want to shoot for when you're min-maxing the character. Now, one thing to note here, when it comes to gear progression, very important. Check out the Act 1 tab right here. There's going to be something called Better Trading. This is what I used for a lot of my rare purchases throughout the entire league, which is this code right here, and I'm going to show it to you. You copy this whole code, you get an extension called Better Trading, and you say import folder. It should say Meteor Bear, and there should be a Val Orb right there representing Fate of the Valve League. You click save, and all of a sudden, I have set up a bunch of weighted sums for rare items, along with a few uniques for some decent leveling items, but the most important thing is the weighted sums. And how you use these is you open up the filter tab here. This is basically, I'm telling you, this is how valuable I think each of these stats are. And when you want to make an upgrade, you'll say, okay, my level of my character right now is level 52. That's my highest level. Then you'll click search and you'll say, okay, this item's 1x. I have a couple more X to spare. I have a bit of a better budget. What you could do is say, I want to adjust my budget to 5x. Search, that will limit this to be only items that are 5x or lower. And then you can click this button to sort by the highest or the lowest. And this shows you the strongest item for 5x on trade. 30 strength, 30 cold res, mana leech, life, flat damage. That is a great pair of gloves. All this is a tool to help you get yourself some upgrades as you progress your character. I have weighted some set up for not only gloves, rings, amulets, you name it, every rare piece. I have gone through all the possible stats. I've given them various weightings. Keep in mind, I am human. This is not perfect. Some of these weightings are probably a bit higher than they should be or a bit lower than they should be. You can kind of adjust for yourself, or you know specifically what you need for your character. Like, let's say you're looking to buy a ring and you know you don't have mana leech in your build yet. Go ahead and put an and filter and say physical attack mana leech. And this will guarantee every search. Well, it does obey this weighted sum, but it also is going to give you all rings that have mana leech on it. Simply just adjust the weighting number, adjust the level requirements, or adjust your budget to give yourself the best bang for your buck. This is what I'd recommend for all your rare pieces. If you're looking, for example, a lot of people ask me about jewels. The Mobilytics site did not properly import jewels. So I go over in the endgame tab, for example, I reference the unique jewels we have in the build, which is... maybe that tab got deleted. Okay, I'm gonna have to rewrite that section. So I will rewrite that section. But anyways, the point is, rare jewels are on this list right here, which has a list of good mods that I like for the build. You just adjust the weighting when you're trying to make a better jewel for your build. And on top of that, I will have a reference to the unique jewels I have in the build. I guess yesterday when I wrote up a whole section about priorities of when to get gear, that got deleted. So I'm going to rewrite that. But yeah, anyways, that Better Trading is for your use to buy yourself some upgrades based on where you are in progression. Just adjust the weightings, adjust the levels, adjust the budget based on what you need for your character. All right, so that should cover most everything. Hopefully this guide gives you a good look at how to build the character out, how to play it, and some ideas on crafting yourself some upgrades, what progression looks like, all that sort of good stuff. I'll probably do a couple more updates here and there if they like bug fix Savage Fury. I'll probably just, go ahead and change the choices I made in terms of skills and stuff like that on the page. I'm not going to make out a new video every single random update they do, but by the next patch, I would like to keep this guide up to date. Hopefully it doesn't get killed next patch notes, etc. I really enjoyed Meteor Bear, and I hope you guys did too. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care and peace out. Have a good one.